Alien Colonel laughed at weak human soldier lives to regret it. Dust hung in the air like a thin gray fog, and the broken sky above looked tired. Two moons sat low, pale and chipped by cloud and smoke. The frontier world of Kestrel 9 was not a place people visited for beauty. It was a place people ended up when the map ran out and the promises did not. The alien empire called it a stabilized zone. Their ships hovered over the main valley like dark, silent mountains. Their banners floated on tall poles made from a shining metal that never rusted. Their soldiers moved in neat lines with perfect timing, as if a single mind guided them. The humans who lived here once had called it home. Now the home was mostly rubble, and the humans who still breathed were lined up in the open, with their hands bound and their faces turned into the wind. Most of them were soldiers. A few wore torn worker uniforms. Some were so young that their helmets still looked too large for their heads. Private Elias Mercer stood among them, trying to keep his balance. His boots had lost their grip weeks ago. The soles were uneven, and every step felt like walking on loose stone. His uniform was not clean, and it did not fit well. It had belonged to someone else before him. He had grown thinner since the fighting started, and his cheeks had that hollow look that came from too many nights of short sleep. He did not look like a hero. He looked like a person who had been pushed too far and refused to fall only because there was nowhere left to fall. A sharp sound sliced through the murmuring air. It was not a gunshot. It was laughter. It rolled across the line of prisoners and bounced off the broken stone walls behind them. It did not sound warm. It sounded like metal grinding. Colonel Varric stepped forward, and the alien soldiers around him straightened even more, as if pulled by a string. Varric was tall, even for his kind. His armor was polished and marked with bright symbols that showed rank and honor. His face had ridges along the cheeks and brow, and his eyes were a pale gold that caught the light in a way that felt cold. He walked slowly, hands behind his back, looking at the humans like a collector examining damaged goods. "Humans," Varric said in a deep voice through a translator device clipped to his collar. The words came out in clear, sharp English without emotion. "You are smaller than expected." Some of the humans stared down, some stared back. No one spoke. Varric stopped in front of a large human sergeant whose arms were thick even after weeks of hunger. The colonel tilted his head slightly, studying him. "This one," Varric said, "has shape, still inferior but at least shaped." The alien soldiers made low sounds that might have been laughter, might have been something else. Their helmets hid their mouths, but their shoulders moved in a way that suggested amusement. Varric continued along the line. His boots left no prints in the dust. He paused in front of a human woman with a cut across her eyebrow and a stare like hard stone. Varric looked her over, then moved on as if she bored him. Then he reached Elias Mercer. The colonel's golden eyes narrowed. He stared for a long moment as if trying to understand what he was seeing. Mercer's shoulders were sloped. His arms were thin. His hands were scraped and stained. His face was bruised in places, but the bruises were old, fading. Varric's lips pulled back, exposing sharp teeth, and he laughed again. "This," Varric said, and the translator carried his tone perfectly, surprise, mockery, joy at finding a joke. "This is what your species sends to fight. Where is the muscle? Where is the armor? Where is the fire?" Mercer did not move. He kept his face calm. His throat felt dry, but he did not swallow. He looked at Varric, not with anger, not with fear, but with a quiet focus, like someone watching a machine that might break in an interesting way. Varric leaned closer. He smelled faintly of something like hot stone after rain. "You are weak," Varric said softly. "A gust of wind could fold you. How did you survive long enough to be captured?" One of the alien officers behind Varric made a sound that was clearly laughter. A few alien soldiers tapped their weapons against their armor in a rhythmic, mocking way. Mercer's fingers twitched once, not from fear, from a thought that had landed in his mind. He had noticed the colonel's translator, the way it clipped to the collar. The way the green light on it flickered when Varric moved his head. A cheap model, Mercer thought. The Empire had thousands of them. Cheap models failed first. Varric straightened and looked down the line again. "Your leaders spoke loudly," Varric announced, raising his voice so all the prisoners could hear. "They said humans are stubborn. They said humans are clever. They said humans are dangerous when cornered." He pointed toward Mercer with one sharp, clawed finger. "And yet I find this thin creature in your ranks, a human made of sticks and breath." The aliens around him laughed again, louder this time. The sound carried far across the open yard. It even reached the half-collapsed buildings on the edge of the camp, where a few alien drones floated and watched, their red sensors blinking. Mercer felt heat rise in his face, but he did not let it show. He did not give Varric what he wanted. Varric stepped closer again, as if the silence bothered him. "Speak," Varric said. "Tell me your name, tell me why you thought you could stand against us." Mercer's voice came out rough but steady. "Private Elias Mercer." The humans beside him shifted slightly, like the simple act of speaking had reminded them they were still people. The alien soldiers watched with interest, as if waiting for entertainment. Varric's eyes glinted. "Mercer," he repeated, trying the sound like it was foreign metal on his tongue. "Tell me, Private Mercer, what is your purpose?" Mercer thought of the colony streets from before the war, the small shop that sold warm bread, the old neighbor who used to wave at everyone. The sound of children chasing each other past the water tanks. He did not say any of that. He said, "To live." A few humans breathed out softly, a small sound but real. Varric laughed again, louder, proud of himself. "A perfect answer from a perfect weakling," he said. "To live. Not to win, not to honor, not to strike back, only to live." Mercer looked at the alien colonel's armor. It was clean. It was expensive. It had small vents along the side, likely for cooling. The Empire's armor used a regulated heat system. Mercer had studied enemy designs before, back when he was still a civilian engineer and the war was a distant rumor. He had not wanted to join the military. He had been pushed into it, like most of the people here. He had been an engineer, a fixer, someone who repaired power lines and water pumps. He had known how systems worked, how small failures became big disasters when no one paid attention. That knowledge sat inside him now like a hidden tool. Varric turned away, finished with his joke. He addressed the camp guards with a sharp gesture. "Take them to processing," he ordered. "Separate the officers, the rest will work." The aliens moved quickly. Energy bindings were tightened. Prisoners were pushed forward. A few stumbled, caught by others before they fell. The guards did not care if the humans stayed standing. They cared only that the line moved. Mercer walked with the others, keeping his steps measured. He did not waste energy on anger. Anger made people loud. Loud people got noticed. Noticed people got broken. He chose something else, attention. He watched the camp as they moved through it. He watched the fences made from layered energy fields that shimmered faintly. He watched the guard towers spaced evenly around the yard. He watched the drones floating in patterned routes. He watched the supply vehicles rolling in and out of a gated area on the far side of the camp. The vehicles were sleek, plated, and marked with the Empire's symbols. Their movement was careful. Their timing was steady. Supply lines, Mercer thought. Every army had them, no matter how proud. They were brought into a wide metal building that smelled of disinfectant and cold air. Processing lines were formed and prisoners were pushed forward in groups. Alien clerks scanned them with handheld devices, their faces unreadable behind visors. Mercer stood still as a scanner passed over him. A faint vibration ran through his bones. The scanner's light turned from green to yellow, then back to green. The alien clerk paused. It looked at Mercer's file on a floating screen. It made a low sound as if confused. Then it waved him through without comment. Mercer did not react, but he noted it. Yellow meant something. Injury, prior skills, risk level, it could mean many things. They were given small packs of food that tasted like dry paste and cups of water that smelled faintly of metal. Some of the humans ate fast. Some ate slowly, trying to make the small amount last longer. Mercer ate enough to quiet his shaking hands and saved the rest in his pocket. They were moved again, this time into a yard behind the processing building, where groups were being assigned. An alien officer stood on a raised platform, reading from a tablet. "Labor unit," the translator said in a flat voice. "Report to Sector 3, debris removal and material sorting." Mercer's group was called. The humans around him looked tired, but there was a small tightening in the air. Labor could mean many things. It could mean carrying rocks. It could mean digging trenches. It could mean working around dangerous machinery. No one knew. They marched through the camp with alien guards at their sides. The guards carried weapons that hummed softly, but they did not fire. They did not need to. The prisoners were too weak and too watched. As they approached Sector 3, Mercer noticed the ground changed. The dust thinned, and the earth beneath showed signs of heavy traffic. There were grooves where vehicles had moved many times. The air smelled faintly of fuel, sharp and clean. A tall fence rose ahead, and beyond it, Mercer saw stacks of sealed metal crates arranged in perfect rows. Drones hovered above them like silent insects. A large gate opened and closed as vehicles moved through, each one scanned twice before entering. A supply hub. Mercer's heart beat a little faster, not from fear but from understanding. Supplies were the blood of the camp. Supplies were power. Supplies were control. The guards led them to a pile of broken debris near the outer wall of the hub. Parts of old human buildings had been dragged here. Shattered panels, twisted beams, cracked solar plates, chunks of concrete. It was a graveyard of what used to be homes. An alien supervisor stepped forward, holding a baton-like tool that flashed with light when it touched objects. "Sort," the translator said. "Metal here, plastics there, tech components there." The supervisor pointed to different sections. "Touch nothing marked with Imperial seal," it added. "Do not approach the gate. Do not speak to the transport crews." A human beside Mercer, a young man with sandy hair and tired eyes, whispered, "This is where they keep their stuff." Mercer did not answer right away. He watched the fence's energy shimmer. He watched the drone's pattern. He watched the timing between scans at the gate. He watched the transport crews who wore different markings than the guards. Different units, Mercer thought. Different rules, different habits. Different mistakes. He started working, lifting broken pieces carefully, not because he cared about the aliens' orders, but because every piece of debris was information. He picked up a cracked solar plate and slid it aside. Under it lay a thin strip of alien material, smooth and dark. It looked like packing foam, but it was too dense, too perfect. He ran his fingers over it lightly and felt a faint vibration like a quiet electrical pulse. His eyes narrowed. A shielding layer, used to block scans. Used to hide sensitive items from casual detection. So even the Empire feared spies and thieves, Mercer thought. Even they had secrets. A few minutes later, a transport vehicle rolled past the fence on the inside, headed toward the gate. Mercer watched it move. He watched the way the vehicle slowed near a specific point, every time like it was adjusting for something invisible. A field shift, Mercer realized. A gap, a seam in the energy barrier. His hands kept moving, sorting metal and plastic, but his mind was somewhere else, mapping the fence, counting drone routes, noting guard rotations. He had not been trained as an officer, not trained for strategy, but he had been trained by life to notice what others ignored. The alien supervisor walked along the line of workers, tapping debris with its baton, flashing lights and barking quick orders. When it reached Mercer, it paused and leaned in, sniffing the air like it could smell thoughts. "You," it said, and the translator made it harsh. "Move faster." Mercer lifted another beam, heavier this time, and placed it where it belonged. "Yes," he said simply. The supervisor stared at him for a long moment, then moved on. The sandy-haired human leaned closer again. "They laughed at you," he whispered, voice tight with quiet anger. "That colonel right in your face." Mercer kept his eyes on the debris. "Let him laugh." "Why?" the young man asked. Mercer slid a piece of shattered metal into the correct pile. "Because laughing makes people careless." The young man looked at him like he did not understand, but there was a small spark in his eyes. A spark that had not been there earlier. Across the yard, far above them on a walkway inside the hub, Colonel Varric appeared again. He stood with two officers and looked out over the labor crews like a king watching ants. Varric's gaze found Mercer, as if the colonel had been looking for him. The alien smiled, slow and confident, and even from this distance, Mercer could feel the mockery in it. Varric lifted one hand in a small gesture, half greeting, half insult, then turned away. Mercer watched him go, and his face stayed calm, but his thoughts sharpened. The Empire thought strength was only in muscle. It thought power was only in size and weapons and loud voices. It did not understand what humans had learned through centuries of hard living on difficult worlds. Humans built things that worked even when they should not. Humans fixed broken systems in storms and darkness. Humans survived by learning fast and refusing to quit. Mercer looked again at the fence, and the shimmering seemed near the point where vehicles slowed. He looked at the drones and their predictable loops. He looked at the sealed crates and wondered what was inside. Food, weapons, batteries, communication nodes. All the things an army needed. He lifted another piece of debris and felt its weight in his hands. He did not feel strong. He did not feel brave. He felt tired. But he also felt something else deep under the tiredness. A plan beginning to take shape. As the day's thin light shifted and the air cooled, the labor crews kept moving. Mercer kept sorting, kept watching, kept counting. He did not know yet how he would do it. He did not know how long it would take. He did not know who could be trusted. But he knew one thing with clear certainty. The Colonel's laugh had not ended the story. The night on Kestrel 9 did not fall fast. It crept in slowly, like a tired animal dragging itself across the sky. The light faded from pale gray to deep blue, and the two moons rose higher, casting long shadows across the labor yard. The humans were finally marched back to their holding area. Their steps were slow, their backs bent, and their hands sore from lifting broken pieces of a world that no longer belonged to them. Elias Mercer walked with his head down, but his eyes stayed alive. The holding area was a wide, low building made of rough metal panels. Inside, the air was warmer but heavy, filled with the smell of sweat, dust, and old food. Thin lights ran along the ceiling, buzzing softly. The humans were pushed into rows of narrow sleeping spaces marked by lines on the floor. Some dropped down right away, too tired to care. Others sat and whispered in low voices, sharing fears, rumors, and half-formed hopes. Mercer sat against the wall and leaned his head back. His body ached in places he had forgotten could ache. He closed his eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to think. He replayed the day in his mind, the fence, the seam in the energy field, the drone patterns, the way the transport crews moved differently than the guards, the shielding layer hidden under the debris. He opened his eyes again and scanned the room. People were the hardest part of any plan. A man across from him was rubbing his hands together, whispering a prayer under his breath. A woman nearby was checking a bandage on her arm, her face tight with pain. The sandy-haired young man from the yard sat a few spaces away, staring at the floor like he was trying to see through it. Mercer watched them all, not as strangers, but as parts of a system. Systems only worked when the pieces fit together. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling rest hours. A pair of alien guards stood near the door, their weapons hanging at their sides. Their posture was relaxed. They did not expect trouble here. Mercer shifted his position and leaned toward the sandy-haired man. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. The man looked up, surprised. "Jonah," he said after a moment. "Jonah Pike." "Mercer," Elias said. "You used to do anything before all this?" Jonah shrugged. "Dock worker, moved cargo, loaded ships. I know crates and containers." "That's about it?" Mercer nodded slightly. That was more than about it. That was useful. Across the room, the woman with the bandage caught Mercer's eye. She had been watching him, he realized, not in a curious way, but in a careful way. She leaned closer. "You were counting drones today," she whispered. Mercer did not answer right away. He looked at her face, at the steady look in her eyes. "I was a teacher," she added. "Math and systems, you don't stare at the sky like that unless you're counting." Mercer allowed himself a small breath. "Elias." "Mara," she said. Jonah leaned in a little. "So, you all thinking the same thing I am?" Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. "If you're thinking about the fence and the gate, yes." Mercer did not smile, but something eased inside his chest. Not alone, then. A low mechanical sound rolled through the building as the lights dimmed further. Rest cycle. People laid down. Some turned their faces to the wall. Some stared at the ceiling. The guards shifted their weight but stayed where they were. Mercer lay on his side, facing away from the guards. Jonah lay near him. Mara was a few spaces down. Mercer whispered, so softly it was barely sound. "Tomorrow, don't work fast, don't work slow, work normal." Jonah frowned. "Why?" "Because normal is invisible," Mercer said. The next day came with a harsh light and a sharp sound from a metal horn. The humans were marched back to Sector 3. The air felt colder in the morning and the dust clung to their boots. Mercer's eyes went right back to the fence. The seam in the energy field was still there. The drones still moved in loops that crossed at the same points. The transport crews still paused at the same spot near the gate. The Empire liked patterns. Mercer picked up debris and sorted it like he was supposed to. He also kept a small piece of shielding material in his pocket, hidden under a strip of broken plastic. Jonah worked nearby, lifting and stacking pieces of metal with practiced care. He knew how to handle heavy things without making noise. That was another useful skill. Myra worked on the other side of the pile, her movements steady and calm. She counted under her breath sometimes, not numbers, but time. How long between drone passes? How long between guard patrols? An alien supervisor walked by, tapping its baton on a crate. "Faster," it said. Mercer lifted a beam and shifted it. "Yes." Hours passed, the sun climbed higher, the drones hummed, the fence shimmered. Then by accident or design, Jonah dropped a piece of broken panel near the fence. It made a loud clang. The supervisor snapped its head around. "Careless," it barked. Jonah raised his hands. "Sorry," he said. Mercer watched as a drone drifted closer, scanning the area. Its red sensor passed over Jonah, then over Mercer, then over the debris pile. When it passed over the spot where Mercer had slipped the shielding layer into the pile, the sensor flickered for half a second. Just half a second. The drone moved on. Mercer's heart beat faster. At midday, a transport vehicle rolled through the gate. The transport crew jumped down and began unloading crates. The crates were marked with symbols Mercer did not recognize, but the Empire's seal was on each one. Mara leaned closer to Mercer as they worked. "Those crates go to the north side of the hub," she whispered. "That's where the comm tower is." Mercer nodded. He had noticed the tower yesterday, a tall structure with antenna arms reaching into the sky. Communication center, the voice of the camp, maybe more. Another crate passed through the gate. Another pause at the seam. Mercer lifted a piece of broken metal and moved closer to the fence, pretending to sort. He held the shielding layer in his other hand, hidden by the beam. As a drone passed overhead, he slid the shielding layer against the fence at the seam. The shimmer dimmed slightly, not enough to see, not enough to alarm, just enough to change. The drone passed. Its sensor flickered again. Mercer pulled the shielding back and went back to work. No alarms, no shouting, no blasters raised. Mara looked at him, eyes wide, but she did not speak. The rest of the day passed in the same slow rhythm, but something had changed. That night, back in the holding area, Mercer, Jonah, and Mara leaned close again. "It worked," Jonah whispered. "The drone didn't see it." "Not fully," Mercer said, "but it didn't see enough." Mara rubbed her bandaged arm. "What's the plan, Elias?" Mercer hesitated. Saying it out loud made it real. "We don't break out," he said finally. "Not yet." "We make the camp blind." Jonah blinked. "Blind? The fence, the drones, the scanners, the comm tower," Mercer said. "We make them all lie." Mara's eyes narrowed. "And then," Mercer said, "we let everyone else see the truth." The next few days became a careful dance. Mercer and Jonah moved shielding pieces closer to the fence, little by little. They hid them in debris piles, in broken panels, in cracked tech. The drones flickered more often now, but the Empire's systems corrected for it. The aliens trusted their machines. Mara started mapping the guard shifts. She marked them in her head, then taught others how to see the patterns. More humans began to notice things. A woman who used to work in power plants figured out which cables fed the outer lights. An older man who had been a radio operator listened to the faint hum of the comm tower and learned its rhythm. They did not talk openly. They did not form groups. They stayed small, quiet, normal. One afternoon, a new alien officer came to inspect the yard. He walked with sharp steps and a hard stare. He paused near Mercer. "You," the officer said, "you were the one the colonel laughed at." Mercer looked up. "Yes," the officer studied him. "The colonel finds you amusing." Mercer said nothing. "Be careful," the officer added. "Things that amuse him do not always live long." Then the officer walked away. That night the holding area felt tighter. Whispers spread. Fear moved like a cold wind. Jonah leaned in. "They're watching us more." Mercer nodded. "Good, good," Jonah hissed. "Means they still don't see," Mercer said. On the fifth day, Mercer made a bigger move. A transport crew came in with a set of smaller crates marked differently. Mercer recognized the symbol, power cells. He caught Myra's eye and nodded once. As the crates passed through the gate, Jonah stumbled again, closer this time. The supervisor barked, but Jonah kept his balance. Mercer slid a shielding layer against the seam and held it there longer. The drone passed. This time its sensor went dark for a full second. Long enough, Myra moved. She dropped a piece of broken tech near the fence, right where the shielding was. Inside the tech was a small alien device one of the humans had taken apart and rewired. A scanner loop. The fence shimmered, then pulsed. Nothing else happened. But far away, inside the hub, a screen flickered. That night, the lights in the camp went out for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of darkness, 3 seconds of silence. Then the lights came back on. The guards laughed it off. "Power surge," one said in his own language. But Mercer lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, because in those 3 seconds the comm tower had gone quiet. Myra leaned close. "That was you." "That was us," Mercer said. The next day, Colonel Varric came to the yard. He stood on the raised walkway again, looking down at the workers. His eyes were sharp now, no laughter in them. He pointed at the supervisor. They spoke in low tones. Then Varek's gaze found Mercer again. This time there was no smile. Mercer held his eyes calm and steady. The colonel did not know it yet, but the camp was already changing. The machines were starting to lie. The patterns were starting to break. And every system, no matter how strong, fell apart when it could no longer trust itself. As the day went on, Mercer felt it clearly in his chest. The plan was no longer just an idea. It was moving. The sky over Kestrel 9 looked wrong. The clouds did not move the way they used to. They drifted in slow, uneven lines, like something in the air was pushing them from below. The two moons were still there, pale and distant, but even they seemed to watch the camp more closely now. Elias Mercer felt the change before he saw it. The guards stood straighter. The drones flew lower. The hum of the fence was sharper, louder, like a warning that never stopped. The camp had noticed. The humans were marched to Sector 3 as usual, but the mood was different. No one whispered. No one joked. Even the sandy dust seemed to hold its breath. Mercer walked between Jonah and Mara. His hands were empty, but his mind was full. He went over every step they had taken, every small change they had made. He knew this was the moment when careful work either became success or became a mistake that could not be undone. They reached the supply yard. The fence shimmered. The drones hovered. The crates stood in perfect lines. Colonel Varek stood on the raised walkway above the gate, his armor shining in the light. Two officers stood beside him. A group of alien technicians worked near the comm tower, checking panels and scanning the air. They were looking for something. The supervisor barked orders and the humans began to sort debris. Mercer lifted a piece of broken metal and felt its weight. He did not rush. He did not slow. He worked like someone who had nothing on his mind at all. Jonah moved nearby, stacking pieces in neat piles. Myra worked farther down the line, her eyes always lifting to the drones, then back to the ground. A transport vehicle rolled through the gate, carrying a load of sealed crates. The gate paused at the seam. Mercer's heart beat once hard. The drone above the gate flickered as it passed, just a little. Varek noticed. The colonel raised one hand. The transport crew froze. The technicians near the tower turned. Varek pointed at the drone. One of the officers tapped something on a device. The drone drifted lower, scanning the gate again. Mercer kept working. The scanner passed over the debris pile where the shielding layers were hidden. The red light dimmed, then brightened. The officer frowned. Varek's eyes narrowed. "Search," Varek ordered. Two guards moved toward the debris pile. Mara saw them first. She dropped a piece of broken panel and let it fall with a loud crash. She stumbled and went down on one knee. The supervisor shouted, "Careless!" The guards turned, distracted. Jonah moved at the same time. He lifted a heavy beam and accidentally tipped it over. It fell across a stack of plastic sheets, sending them sliding across the ground. Shouts followed. The yard filled with noise. Mercer used the moment. He slipped a shielding layer from his pocket and pressed it flat against the seam in the fence, holding it there with his body turned just enough to hide the movement. The shimmer dimmed. The drone passed again. This time the scanner went dark for a full 2 seconds, long enough. Behind the fence, one of the smaller crates near the gate gave a soft click. Inside it, a human-made device powered on. It was not a bomb. It was not a weapon. It was a signal. A ripple moved through the camp systems. The lights near the gate flickered. The comm tower antenna shifted slightly, then froze. A distant alarm chirped once, then went silent. The yard went still. Everyone felt it. Varek straightened. What was that? The technicians near the tower started tapping at their panels. "System check," one said. "Minor fault." Varek did not look convinced. Mercer let the shielding layer fall back into the debris and went back to work. The moment passed, but the camp was no longer the same. By midday, small things began to go wrong. A drone froze in midair for a few seconds before drifting again. A scanner at the processing building showed the same human twice, then skipped another. The outer lights dimmed and came back brighter than before. The aliens blamed their machines. Mercer knew better. That night the holding area buzzed with quiet energy. Not fear, not hope, something sharper. Mara leaned close. "The tower is lagging," she whispered. "I can hear it. The hum is off." Jonah nodded. "The gate scan missed me today. It didn't even blink." Mercer closed his eyes for a moment. "Good, tomorrow we push." "Push how?" Jonah asked. "We make them move," Mercer said. "We make them react." The next day began with a surprise. Instead of being sent to Sector 3, half of the humans were marched toward the processing building. Mercer, Jonah, and Mara were among them. The guards were tighter. The weapons were held higher. Varric stood near the entrance, watching the line. Mercer met his gaze as he passed. The colonel did not laugh, he did not smile. "Inside," a guard ordered. They were led into a wide room filled with scanning arches and floating screens. The air felt cold and clean. Technicians moved around, checking data streams. The humans were scanned one by one. Mercer stepped through an arch. The light washed over him. The screen flashed green, then yellow, then green again. The technician frowned. Varric watched closely. Mercer's heart beat faster, but his face stayed calm. "Next," the technician said. Jonah went through. Green. Mara went through. Green. They were herded into a side room and told to wait. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Finally, an officer came in. "You will return to labor," the translator said. "Do not test our patience." They were marched back to Sector 3. Jonah leaned in. "That was close." "They're searching for something they can't see," Mercer said. Varric was waiting on the walkway again. "Today," the colonel announced, his voice carrying across the yard, "we will demonstrate the strength of the Empire." A group of alien soldiers brought out a captured human vehicle. It was old, battered, and painted with faded colony colors. They set it in the center of the yard. Varric raised his hand. One of the soldiers fired a controlled blast. The vehicle melted and folded in on itself, turning into a smoking pile of metal. The aliens made low sounds of approval. Varric looked at the humans. "This is what resistance becomes," he said. Mercer felt anger rise, hot and sharp. He pushed it down. Instead, he watched the power flow. He saw how the weapon drew energy. He saw the flicker in the lights when it fired. He saw the moment the comm tower's antenna twitched. The systems were tied together. Everything was tied together. That afternoon, the transport crews brought in a large shipment. Bigger crates, heavier vehicles, more drones. The Empire was reinforcing. Mercer knew what that meant. Time was running out. He caught Mara's eye and nodded. This was the day. Jonah moved closer to the fence, working near the seam. He pretended to struggle with a heavy panel, leaning into the barrier just enough. Mercer slid the shielding layer into place and held it. Mara dropped another piece of tech near the fence. This one was different. It was a human-built transmitter, small and rough, hidden inside alien casing. The drone passed. The scanner went dark. The transmitter activated. A wave of false signals flooded the camp's network. Screens inside the hub flickered. Drones hesitated. The comm tower's lights flashed in a broken pattern. An alarm finally sounded. Not loud, not steady, confused. Varric spun. "Report," technicians shouted back in their own language. "Multiple system faults, drones losing sync, comm tower desinced." The fence shimmered, then dimmed in sections. Humans froze, then moved, not in a rush, in a flow. One group pulled a stack of debris against the fence where the field was weakest. Another group rushed a frozen drone and tipped it over. Someone grabbed its power cell and yanked it free. Guards shouted and raised weapons, but their scanners flickered. Their targeting systems hesitated. Mercer ran. He did not run toward the fence. He ran toward the comm tower. Mara and Jonah ran with him. A few others followed, driven by instinct and courage and the sudden feeling that something impossible was becoming real. A guard fired. The shot went wide. The tower loomed above them, metal and light and humming power. Mercer reached a panel at the base. It was sealed. Jonah slammed a metal bar into it. Once, twice. The panel cracked. Myra reached inside and pulled free a bundle of cables. She twisted two together. The tower's lights flared. Across the camp, the drones dropped from the air like dead birds. The fence went dark in a wide section. The main alarm howled to life, loud and steady now. Varric roared orders. Alien soldiers rushed forward. Mercer backed away from the tower, heart pounding. He grabbed the transmitter from Mara and held it up. "Now," he said. Mara hit a switch. The transmitter sent a wide signal, not just across the camp, but into the sky, into space. It carried images, data, and proof. The Empire's camp, the prisoners, the weapons, the occupation. It rode the comm tower's broken network outward, looking for anything that would listen. Mercer did not know who would hear it. He only knew someone would. The guards reached them. A human group tackled one from the side. Another threw a piece of debris. A third pulled a weapon from a fallen alien and did not know how to use it, but held it anyway. Varric pushed through the chaos, his armor marked with flashing warnings. He saw Mercer. Their eyes locked across the yard. Varric raised his weapon. Mercer did not run. The ground shook, not from weapons, from above. A distant shape moved across the sky, far beyond the clouds. A ship not alien, human, then another, and another. The signal had been heard. Varric froze. The humans in the yard froze. The camp fell into a strange, quiet pause. The future hung in the air, heavy and bright and full of things no one could take back. Mercer stood, breathing hard, and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Not fear, not anger, hope. The sky above Kestrel 9 did not stay quiet for long. The first human ship broke through the clouds like a falling star that had learned how to stop. Its hull glowed faintly from heat, and blue light ran along its sides in clean, sharp lines. The ship did not fire, it did not threaten, it simply arrived. Then another ship appeared behind it, then another. The alien soldiers froze in place, their weapons half raised, their systems still flickering from the broken signals running through the camp. The drones lay scattered across the ground like dark shells, lifeless and still. Elias Mercer stood near the base of the comm tower, his chest rising and falling fast. Jonah and Mara were beside him, their faces lit by the soft glow from the human ships above. Colonel Varric lowered his weapon slowly. His golden eyes never left the sky. The human ships moved into a wide formation, spreading out like a wall made of light and steel. Smaller craft slipped out from their sides and drifted lower, scanning the camp, the yard, the fence, the towers. A voice filled the air. It did not come from a speaker in the camp. It came from everywhere at once. "This is the human coalition fleet," the voice said, calm and clear. "We are responding to a distress signal from this planet. All forces on the ground are ordered to stand down." The alien officers looked at Varric. Varric did not answer right away. The humans in the yard did not move either. They stood in loose groups, hands empty, breathing hard, not sure what came next. Varric finally spoke into his own comm device. His voice was steady but tight. "This world is under Imperial control. You have no right to enter this space." The voice from the sky replied without anger. "This world is under observation. The signal we received shows prisoners, forced labor, and military occupation. These actions violate interstellar agreements." Varric's jaw tightened. Around him, alien technicians tried to bring systems back online. Screens flickered. Data streams jumped and froze. The Empire's network was still confused, still broken in places. Mercer watched it all like a quiet storm. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a tired person standing in the middle of something much bigger than himself. One of the smaller human craft lowered closer to the ground. Its engines hummed softly, not loud, not threatening. A ramp slid open on its side. Human figures stepped out. They wore clean uniforms marked with simple symbols. They carried no heavy weapons, only small sidearms and scanning tools. They walked toward the yard slowly, hands visible, eyes alert. The alien soldiers shifted, unsure. Varric raised one hand and his troops stopped. The human team reached the edge of the yard. Their leader, a woman with short dark hair and a calm face, looked around at the humans standing in the dust, the broken drones, the dark fence, the towering comm structure. Her eyes found Mercer. She walked toward him. "Are you the one who sent the signal?" she asked. Mercer hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Yes." She studied him, taking in his worn uniform, his scraped hands, his tired eyes. "You did good," she said simply. Mercer felt something tight in his chest loosen just a little. Behind them, Varric stepped forward. "This is not over," the colonel said. "The Empire does not forget." The human leader turned to face him. "We don't either." The two stood facing each other across the yard, one tall and armored, the other smaller and unarmed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the human ships in the sky shifted position. More of them appeared on the horizon, distant lights moving closer. Varric looked up. He knew what it meant. The Empire had come here strong, proud, certain. But now the eyes of the galaxy were turning toward this small, broken world. The colonel made a sharp gesture to his officers. They spoke quickly among themselves. Finally, Varric raised his voice. "All units stand down." The alien soldiers lowered their weapons. A sound moved through the humans in the yard, not cheering, not shouting, relief. The human team moved quickly after that. They scanned the fence, the towers, the buildings. They guided the prisoners into safe areas. Medical staff arrived from the ships and began treating injuries, cleaning wounds, handing out warm food and water. Mercer sat on the ground for a moment, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him. Jonah dropped down beside him, laughing softly. "We did it," he said. I don't know how, but we did it. Myra sat on Mercer's other side. She looked up at the sky at the ships floating like silent giants. You did it, she said. You started it. Mercer shook his head. We all did. Not far away, Varric stood with his officers as a human representative spoke to them. The conversation was quiet but intense. Data was shared. Screens were shown. Images of camps, prisoners, and broken systems from other worlds appeared. The Empire's actions were not just here. They were everywhere. Varric's posture changed as he watched. The pride in his stance faded into something harder to name. Later, as the camp began to empty and humans were guided toward transport ships, Varric found Mercer again. The colonel walked alone now without his officers. He stopped a few steps away. You, Varric said, the weak one. Mercer stood. Varric studied him, not with mockery this time, but with something close to respect. You did not win with strength, Varric said. You did not win with weapons. Mercer said nothing. You broke our systems, Varric continued. You turned our own network against us. You brought the sky down on my command. Mercer met his eyes. You built a system that hurt people. I just showed others where to look. Varric was silent for a long moment. The Empire will change because of this, he said finally, or it will break. Mercer nodded. That's how systems work. A human officer called for Mercer from across the yard. Varric took one step back. You are not weak, he said. You are dangerous in a way I did not understand. Mercer watched the colonel walk away, his armor no longer shining as brightly as it had before. The humans boarded the transport ships in small groups. Some cried, some laughed. Some just stared at the floor of the ramp like they were afraid this might still be a dream. Mercer walked up the ramp with Jonah and Mara. Inside the ship, the air was clean and warm. The lights were soft. The floor was steady. A medic guided them to seats and checked their vitals. You're safe now, she said. Mercer closed his eyes for a moment at the word, safe. The ship lifted off smoothly. Through a small window, Mercer watched Kestrel 9 grow smaller. The camp became a cluster of dark shapes. The yard became a patch of dust. The human fleet filled the sky. Jonah leaned over. What happens now? Mercer thought about it. Now, he said, we tell our story. The ship docked with a larger vessel in orbit. Inside, there were more humans, more freed prisoners from other camps, more people with the same tired eyes and quiet strength. Mercer was guided to a small room with a table and a screen. A human official sat across from him. We'd like you to explain how you did it, she said. The fence, the drones, the signal. Mercer took a slow breath. He explained. He talked about seams and patterns and shielding layers, about drone loops and power links, about how systems failed when they trusted themselves too much. The official listened closely, taking notes. This could help other worlds, she said when he finished. Mercer nodded. That's the point. Later, Mercer found a quiet corner of the ship and sat alone for a while. The noise of people and machines faded into the background. He thought about his old colony. The shop with the warm bread, the neighbor who waved, the children running past the water tanks. He did not know if those places still existed, but he knew something else did. A line had been crossed. The Empire had been seen. The galaxy had been shown what humans did when they were pushed too far. Mara found him there. She sat down beside him. They're calling this a turning point, she said. Mercer looked at her. It was just a fence. Mara smiled. It was never just a fence. Outside the window, stars stretched across the dark like scattered light. Somewhere out there, worlds were watching. Empires were thinking. Systems were shifting. And one tired human engineer-turned-soldier had helped start it by noticing a small shimmer in the air and refusing to look away. Mercer leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. The fight was not over. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like the future had room to breathe. The stars stretched endlessly outside the large observation window of the human coalition ship. Elias Mercer stood with Myra and Jonah, watching the faint glow of Kestrel 9 shrinking below them. The planet looked calm now, peaceful even, but Mercer knew better. He had been here. He had seen the dust swirl through broken streets, heard the faint hum of energy fields, and watched the Empire's soldiers march with precise order. Peace could be fragile, but for the first time in a long while, it felt possible. Inside the ship, the hum of machinery was steady, a quiet reminder that life continued. Humans moved about efficiently, checking systems, guiding newly freed prisoners to quarters and offering food and water. Some of the freed had tears in their eyes, some laughed quietly, and others sat in silence, staring at nothing at all. Each one carried the weight of what had happened on Kestrel 9. Each one carried the memory of humiliation, survival, and quiet courage. Mercer took a slow breath, letting it fill his lungs. The fatigue of the past days, weeks, months seemed to press against him, but he held it in. There was no time yet to rest fully. There was work to do. A human officer approached, a woman with short, dark hair and an authoritative presence that did not need words to demand respect. She stopped in front of Mercer and held out her hand. "You are Elias Mercer?" she asked, her voice firm but kind. Mercer nodded, gripping her hand lightly. "Yes, I want you to come with me," she said. "We need your eyes and your mind. The Coalition wants to understand how the Empire operates, and you've already proven your understanding." Mercer glanced at Mara and Jonah. They nodded silently. This was their mission too, in some way, though he knew his role had been different. He had started small, unnoticed, patient. And now the galaxy was paying attention. The officer led them through a wide corridor lined with observation windows showing the planet far below. The freed prisoners had been guided toward larger vessels for relocation and safety. They waved quietly at Mercer, some with trembling hands, some with eyes bright with hope. Inside the briefing room, a large table stretched across the center. Screens displayed images of the Kestrel 9 camp, the fences, the drones, the comm tower, and the piles of debris. Coalition members gathered around, discussing the significance of the transmitted signal and the disruptions Mercer had caused. A senior officer, seated at the head of the table, tapped a finger on a data pad. "It's remarkable," he said. One small group of humans disrupted the entire camp's operation without conventional weapons. We are seeing failures in the Empire's network that even our best intelligence predicted would take years to observe. Mercer shifted in his chair. He felt a strange combination of pride and discomfort. "We didn't do it for recognition," he said quietly. "We did it to survive, to help others survive." The officer nodded, studying him. "Sometimes the simplest motives are the strongest." Myra leaned forward. "But the Empire will come back," she said. "They will not forget what happened here." "Yes," Mercer admitted, "they won't, but neither will we, and we're not waiting for them to make the first move." The screens changed, showing star maps and fleet movements. Mercer's heart beat faster as he saw human ships moving through the systems near Kestrel 9, coordinating with allies who had responded to the signal. The Empire's occupation of frontier worlds would face resistance now, organized and unified. The galaxy had seen the strength in humanity's endurance, ingenuity, and courage. Jonah broke the silence. "We're really doing this. We're making a difference beyond this planet." Mercer nodded. "One step at a time." The senior officer rose and walked to the window. "Kestrel 9 is just the beginning," she said. "The Empire's systems are vulnerable, their networks are not invincible, and humanity, humans, have already proven they adapt, endure, and survive where others fail." Mercer felt a warmth in his chest. Not pride exactly, not joy, but a deep satisfaction. He had been small, unnoticed, underestimated. And now the galaxy had started to understand the quiet strength of humans. He thought of the Colonel. Varric had laughed at him once, confident that a single weak human could not challenge the Empire. That had been the first mistake. The Colonel had underestimated something he could not measure with strength, numbers, or weapons. Mercer understood that now more than ever, humans did not need to be the strongest in the conventional sense. Their power was in endurance, creativity, and will. The officer at the window spoke again, softer this time. "Varric will remember today. Not just the failure of his systems, but the lesson that humans are unpredictable, clever, and capable of adaptation. He may be powerful, but he is no longer invincible in mind or spirit." Mercer leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a rare moment of reflection. He remembered the camp, the fences, the drones, and the comm tower. He remembered the look on Varric's face as he realized the human prisoners had done more than survive. They had struck with precision, intelligence, and patience. A soft chime echoed through the room, signaling a message incoming from the fleet commander. Mercer glanced at the screen as the transmission played. Leaders from nearby systems had received the evidence. They were coordinating responses to protect other human colonies and frontier worlds. Myra's eyes widened. "They're listening, they're acting." "Yes," Mercer said quietly. "They are, and now we watch and guide." The officer approached him once more. "You'll be part of the advisory team," she said. Your experience here, your observations, will help others plan and prevent future occupations. You'll be helping not just Kestrel 9, but every world at risk. Mercer nodded. I will do what I can. Outside, the human ships continued to move in formation, their lights gleaming against the dark expanse of space. They were a symbol of something bigger than any one person, a reminder that even the smallest, weakest individual could shape events in ways that no one had expected. Jonah leaned closer. Do you think they'll come after us again? Mercer considered for a moment. They might, but this time we know how to survive, we know how to fight without fighting, we know how to turn weakness into advantage. Mara added, and we won't be alone. Mercer looked at the two of them, then back at the stars. The galaxy stretched out in endless possibilities, filled with danger, opportunity, and hope. Humanity had survived worse. Humanity had endured worse. And now humanity had shown it could rise, adapt, and turn even the most impossible situation into a chance to change the game. The freed humans returned to the ship, guided by coalition personnel. Some sat quietly, others spoke in low tones about what they had seen and done. The air was filled with a sense of cautious optimism, a fragile but growing confidence that the galaxy could be shaped not just by empires, but by people who refused to give up. Mercer stood again, moving to the observation window. He watched the horizon of Kestrel 9 shrink further, seeing the outlines of ruined cities, the broken landscape, and the humans who had survived against all odds. He thought of every small decision, every hidden shielding layer, every careful observation that had brought them to this moment. And he realized something. This was not just about survival. It was about proving something larger, that humans, even the ones who seemed weak or unnoticed, could shape events that changed the galaxy. A soft voice spoke behind him. What happens now? Mara asked. Mercer turned to her, his face calm but determined. Now, he said, we help others. We show them how to endure. We teach them that survival is not about strength alone. It's about patience, intelligence, and will. The galaxy has seen a glimpse of what humans can do. Now we make sure they never forget it. The ships in orbit adjusted their formation, and the stars stretched endlessly before them. A quiet energy filled the human crew. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Kestrel 9, but for humanity across the stars. Mercer's thoughts returned to Colonel Varak. The colonel would survive, but he would remember this day forever. He would remember the human who had been laughed at, underestimated, and dismissed. The human who had turned weakness into power, patience into strategy, and fear into action. And somewhere deep in his chest, Mercer felt the faintest spark of something he had not allowed himself in months: pride. Not personal pride, not ego, but the quiet satisfaction that humanity had endured, survived, and begun to rise. The ship moved smoothly through space, carrying humans away from the broken planet, but their eyes, their minds, and their hearts remained connected to it. They had faced an empire and shown that humanity could endure, could adapt, and could fight with intelligence when brute strength was not enough. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. But inside, for the first time in a long time, humans on this ship felt something that had been denied to them for too long: hope. Elias Mercer leaned back, letting the ship's hum fill the silence. The galaxy had changed. The Empire had learned a lesson. And humanity had proven once again that even the smallest, weakest, or underestimated could rise and make a difference that no one would ever forget. The future was uncertain. Challenges would come. Empires would retaliate. But for the first time, humans knew something they had not always known. They had power in ways that no weapon could measure, in ways that no empire could ignore, and in ways that could shape the stars themselves. Mercer closed his eyes, letting the quiet settle over him. He had survived, they had survived, and humanity had endured. The galaxy would remember, and they would rise again if ever they were tested.